What you and Howard brought and how you changed the second golden age of animation, changed the face of the company.
And think about that if they hadn't produced Little Mermaid. All these films that have happened in the last 30 years may not have happened.
I don't realize that this artistic milestone was happening in front of us, that the older we get, we become history.
Hello, my friends. My name is Big Z, and I get to live out my dream. I get to talk about what I love for a living. Some of you may know me from my other channel, Lore Star, where I talk about Star Wars and all the hidden lore underneath, but Star Wars isn't my only love, and I have a lot more that I wanted to talk about. And if you're here, it's probably because you have a lot more that you want to learn about. I love Star Wars, but I wanted to go beyond. I wanted to talk about the whole of storytelling and why it moves us and how it shapes us. And I wanted to come here and to start something new, something that is going to be a project of love and of learning, to find meaning in narrative. So if that's something that interests you as much as it interests me, join me as we go beyond storytelling. Recently, Disney did the impossible, the Little Mermaid live-action remake. Now, I went into this fully expecting to hate it. After all, none of the Disney live-action remakes have been what I would call worthwhile. I'd always said that the problem was that movies like Lion King were already perfect. Obviously, I say that with a hefty amount of bias thrown in there, but what I mean to say is that the animation of Lion King enhances the storytelling. It doesn't diminish it. By working in the realm of cartoon, the animators were far more able to convey human emotions on animal faces.
Now back out here in paradise, look at him. How pathetic can you get? Look at the expression on that creature's face. He's sated like someone who's just eaten a gallon of ice cream, and he's got this pathetic, self-satisfied, naive, clueless, unconscious grin on his face, which the animators did a very nice job of capturing. Like, that's a complicated expression, and you just want to slap him. And that's exactly what should happen, and that's exactly what does happen.
Now that's a lot harder to do when you are making something that should be and could be mistaken for an Animal Planet special. It just doesn't translate as well because you have to maintain the realism, and the stepping away from realism is part of how that narrative becomes impactful. That these facial expressions that we see, part of the reason why they resonate with us is because they have to be unrealistic so that they can mimic our own feelings and emotions while still looking like a lion cub.
The animators do a very nice job of this part of the movie, because one of the things you see is that his eyebrows are always pointing up in the middle, whereas his father's eyebrows were pointing down in the middle. And so that's the difference between this, which is sort of like things are happening to me, and this, which is more like I'm imposing my will on things, and that's an immature face, and the animators capture that brilliantly. Even here you see when he's got kind of an aggressive look on his face, there's still nothing about it that's commanding. It's petulant, right? It's like, well, now I'm irritated. Now you see what the animators do here. It's very cool. So there's Simba, and there's his reflection, but you see that is already half his father, and you look at the difference in the eyebrows and the look. So there's a tightness of jaw and a firmness of face that's starting to manifest itself there, and that means that he's starting to see the man he could be beyond the adolescent. That's a good way of thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, well, that's a whole different face, right? That's a seriously different face.
While the live-action Lion King was revolutionary for its movie-making technology and the way it pushed the boundaries and paved the way for technology like Lucasfilm's Volume that was used for The Mandalorian and other Star Wars shows, it's not a better viewing experience for the average cinema goer than the original was. I always said that they were making a mistake by remaking their most popular works rather than things that maybe could have used some polishing up. What they should have done, I always used to say, was take works with unparalleled potential, but potential that either wasn't actualized or undermined by a poor execution. Things like Hunchback of Notre Dame. Have you seen that movie lately? It really could use a makeover. Like, conceptually, it's brilliant. It has one of the most remarkable soundtracks of any Disney score ever, but it's just so tonally awkward.
Mary Wicks, Charles Kimbrough, and Jason Alexander are the three wisecracking gargoyles.
It is a treat to watch the colorful pageantry of the simple peasant folk.
Look, a mime.
With these really heavy and quasi-adult themes, and yet this really juvenile, almost potty humor style of jokes that just serve to really remind you that this is not something you should be taking seriously. It really makes the viewing experience feel disjointed. And that's not to say that you can't have something that appeals to the whole family. I think that movies like the original Lion King did that very well, and even movies like Beauty and the Beast are some of my favorites. But with Hunchback, the execution just wasn't there, and I always thought that this would have been just the great starting point for what a Disney live-action remake could do, is take something like Hunchback, something that could have been great and wasn't, and then, you know, fix it. Make it better, use the changes that you're going to make to enhance what was a kind of a misstep originally.
Pour the wine and cut the cheese.
Sit.
Another misstep in these Disney live-action remakes is sometimes the addition of new songs. And now, to preface, Evermore is one of my favorite songs for any Disney thing written ever.
Wasting in my lonely tower, waiting by an open door.
And I think the emotion captured in that piece is remarkable. The problem is songs written for the Disney Renaissance were not written in a vacuum. They are layered and laced into the fabric of the film's musical identity. When Alan Menken and Howard Ashman began work on The Little Mermaid, they set the tone for what would become the Disney standard.
I just remember Howard telling me over and over again, don't oversing it. It's a monologue that happens to be put to pitch. Just tell the story.
It changed the way Disney movies were made. Ashman and Menken believed that songs should be woven into the story in the same way that themes or ideas should carry on throughout a story and tie the narrative together. The music should do the same thing. This idea was most heavily associated with the opera composer Richard Wagner, most known for writing the opera The Ring Cycle, which is the opera which contains the famous Flight of the Valkyries. Wagner essentially believed that each person, place, thing, or idea should be accompanied by or represented by its own musical cue. And we oftentimes call these themes, but that isn't quite accurate. It's a bit of a misnomer. You see, the Imperial March is the theme for Darth Vader, but very seldom do we actually hear the full Imperial March. Most often we only hear, and we only need to hear, these first 8 notes. We don't need the full 3-minute song to play every time we see Vader or get the concept of Vaderness. We only need those first couple notes, and we hear the entire theme condensed down to its most important notes, and that is not called a theme, that's called a leitmotif. And so Howard and Ashman did this with The Little Mermaid, and would go on to define every Disney movie made up until Tarzan, and then it would resume again with the release of Tangled. So, like, an example is when Beast transforms at the end of Beauty and the Beast, we get Belle's Unseen Beauty leitmotif. We first hear these notes when she's telling the sheep about her book, and she says that the heroine doesn't recognize that the Prince Charming character is Prince Charming. He has a beauty or a value that goes unseen by the heroine. And we hear it sung again in something there that wasn't there before, when she realizes that Beast has something hidden inside, a hidden beauty that she didn't immediately recognize.
And a bit alarming. He and I shared our love for that scene, because I said, where is really Belle realizing she's in love with the Beast? And he said, I think it's at the moment when she touches his paw right after the little birds jump in his hand, and she runs behind the tree, and actually Mark Hen animated her blushed. I'm partial to that song because to me that's the falling in
Oh, I
love scene.
love that song.
And these notes actually also sort of double as Belle and Beast's love theme. You'd think it would be the actual song Beauty and the Beast, the Tale as Old as Time song, but that song doesn't actually play as often to represent their love as this musical piece here, the Unseen Beauty leitmotif. And like we hear it when Beast turns around after fighting Gaston, or in the middle of fighting Gaston, because he sees that Belle has come back.
Belle.
And finally, we get it here in its most climactic version when the Beast finally transforms. And that's because the unseen beauty that was on the inside is coming out. It's really cool the way they did that. And the problem with adding new songs like Evermore, is that they don't have any musical identity laced through the overall story. Those notes pretty much only occur at that moment. It's not like the Unseen Beauty theme where we hear it sung, but we also have it associated with an idea, and it will play without words several times throughout the movie to remind you of the idea that was articulated in the words, or even if played beforehand, to foreshadow the emotions that you're going to feel when the words for that piece are finally revealed. And so the problem with the Beauty and the Beast live action remake is that the score is already written and it remains largely unchanged. The music for Beast transformation is exactly the same live action cartoon, albeit recorded a little bit bigger and a little bit more magnanimous, which is really cool in and of itself, but the notes are all the same. They're the same notes that were heard in the original score. And this song, Evermore, this is the only point in the movie where we will hear these notes. No matter how good the song is, it will always feel shoehorned in. Evermore's notes aren't laced through the identity of the film, and so the song doesn't really feel like a part of Beast's character or story unless you're directly thinking about it and choosing to actively remember that he sang this at one point. It's not part of your world where you could not possibly forget that that song is part of Ariel's story and character if you tried, because those notes are everywhere, and they will always remind you this is the song that represents Ariel's longing, and it's going to play every time that she feels longing, and you're always going to feel that, and you're going to know what emotions you're meant to associate with those notes because they code it throughout the entire score. So when they made the live action Beauty and the Beast, they failed to do that with Evermore, and it feels like the song is just spliced in. You could forget it's there, and it doesn't change anything about Beast's character, nor does it really feel like it resonates with what we knew of Beast before. I'm not talking about the words, but I'm just talking about the musical identity, because we didn't ever hear those notes prior to him singing that song, and so it just feels like a brand new song, but it does feel out of place. It does feel spliced in. And again, that's not to say it's not an excellent song or it doesn't fit in the story just based on the content of the song. I'm saying that it was put in without giving it roots, and it needed roots in order for it to be as impactful as it possibly could have been. However, that's not what they did with the live-action Little Mermaid remake. It's like they finally got it, and that's probably because they brought back Alan Menken to write the new songs for Little Mermaid's remake.
The Little Mermaid songs are so timeless. We lost Howard Ashman, the original lyricist, who's a genius. So my great hope with this film was to expand the movie, honor Howard's work, and tell the story in a bigger way. And the antidote was Alan Menken and Lin-Manuel Miranda. They're both great collaborators.
I originally thought that they had just learned from their mistakes and realized that, because I'm not the first person to complain that, you know, the musical identity for songs like Evermore just don't fit in the story. So I thought maybe they had heard the complaints and just learned from their mistakes. But no, they literally went back to the source, and they got the very guy who said, this is how our scores should be written.
I mean, to have Alan Menken and to have Lin-Manuel Miranda, and then, they're working together. It's kind of crazy.
I was really happy to get the chance to write lyrics.
We just jumped into the
trenches and said, let's just play.
So Little Mermaid's live-action remake has 3 new songs. Wild Uncharted Waters, which is Eric's song. For the First Time, which is Ariel's new song that she sings just after losing her voice, and she's trying to learn how to walk. And it also has Scuttle's new song, Scuttlebutt, which I don't really think I feel like I need to talk about. The whole thing just kind of reminds me of Morning Report from Lion King Special Edition. This one doesn't have any musical identity throughout the film, but I don't really think that it needs to because it's just kind of pointless. I do, however, want to talk about the other 2 new songs. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, can we just talk about Ariel's voice?
Up where they walk, up where they run.
With Halle Bailey singing, this just fills my heart.
When she sang Part of Your World, it was so moving to me. She does it with such depth and such passion. It actually takes on a new life.
As soon as I saw the movie and I heard her sing, I knew right away why they cast this actress. Like, she just sounds right, and it is good. There's a couple times where she like steps on notes, and I'm not a huge fan of the change, but then there are other times where she'll pull out notes and she'll just like really, really bring it home. And it just feels so good. I am a huge supporter of this decision. I wasn't initially. I think I was in the skeptical camp.
That is not the real
Why is it not the real one?
Because like Ariel's white, not brown.
But then as soon as I heard her sing, I knew exactly why they cast her. Okay, so how do you code new songs into an existing script, let alone 2 new songs? Well, he only really needed to do half of that, Alan Menken, because one song already existed, or at least the lyrics didn't, but the musical notes did. If you listen carefully to For the First Time, Ariel's new song, it actually plays over the notes from a song from the original cartoon called Wedding Announcement.
It's a fire, it's warm and it close.
Now, the new song, when given lyrics, is what happens when Ariel sings it in her head and she's trying to learn how to walk. So she's got all this excitement and she's trying to learn how to walk. She got what she wanted and everything is going great, but she can't walk. She gets pulled down to the floor hard over and over and over again. And so it's excitement tapered by crashing down. And so now, what do we feel when the original song, the place it was originally written, plays during the wedding announcement scene? She's excited because she hears that the prince is going to get married, and so she gets what she wants, and she goes running in, and then gravity pulls her hard to the floor. It enhances this moment by giving you hummable words in your head when it happens, and you can associate those lyrics with this moment, and these emotions are firmly established elsewhere in the plot. It becomes foreshadowing. I cannot begin to express to you how genius this is. He basically took a moment that previously just meant one thing. He abstracted it, made it into a song, and applies it to an earlier point in the film, and boom, we have now injected twice as much meaning and twice as much emotion into this moment. No longer are you just feeling the raw emotion of just that this is what happened, but we actually have a musical identity for Ariel feeling like she's excited that she's getting what she wants and then falling down. Now, to talk about Eric's song.
There you are, over me, taking me with your song.
This was one that they also coded into the score. However, the notes for this one were completely brand new, but they actually went and rewrote a couple of the musical pieces, unlike what they did for Beauty and the Beast. They made changes. They didn't need to make any changes to Wedding Announcement. Those notes were already there. He just took them and gave them lyrics. Eric's song is brand new, so what do? You have to rework some of the stuff you've already written, and they do this a couple of times, but the first one I noticed is right after Ariel rescues Eric, and after she sings to him on the beach and then is scared away into the ocean, there's a pause in the singing before she resumes singing alone on the rock after Eric goes back up to the castle.
Wild uncharted waters, miles beyond the sea.
And normally during this pause it just plays a little connective tissue notes and then she resumes singing, but in here they changed it so that during that pause it plays the notes for Eric's song. And this is before he even sings it, making it serve as a sort of musical foreshadowing, because now when you hear Eric's song for the first time, even on a first viewing, it will already feel like it's part of his character because you already know the song. And you get to that moment where you as the audience, you can feel like you actually already know him. You know that this is part of who he is because you could technically, you feel like you can hum along even when he sings it, because technically, if you were paying enough attention, you could.
I always wonder who you are and where you'll be. In my mind, your melody goes on.
Because you already know this melody, and you already know that this melody is part of Eric's character. So when he sings it, it feels very much in character for Eric to have this moment. It feels much more like a part of Eric's story than Evermore does feel like a part of Beast's story. Now, one big change to the score happens when Triton gives Ariel her legs back and she runs to Eric. And in the cartoon, this is the part of the film where we hear the final reprise for Part of Your World. And in the live action, it does kind of. You see, Menken wrote Eric's song, Wild Uncharted Waters, so that it could play underneath Part of Your World. They can play on top of each other.
I cannot get over you.
And here in the finale, he does exactly that. It's almost like through the music, Ariel calls out, waits, and then Eric's song responds. And then Ariel calls out again and pauses, and Eric answers. Their mirrored longing plays one after the other, and it makes something new and whole. And it's incredible. It is just absolutely amazing that he was able to do this. And not just able to do this, but that he even thought to do this. And it really serves to demonstrate that even at the age of 73, Alan Menken cannot be beat. The work of Menken is incredible, and Disney has done the impossible with The Little Mermaid. They have created a live-action remake that provides something of value, something meaningful, something not present in the original cartoon, all without diminishing or negating the value of that original cartoon from 1989. In short, I didn't want to like this movie, so it's all the more remarkable that I absolutely did. And that's to say nothing of the new siren motif that's tied into the lore, or that the change from Denmark to Jamaica makes it so that, you know, no longer does the marriage between a mermaid and a fishing nation or fishing kingdom cause political problems. That was actually like a problem that was pointed out in the original. And now they make it clear their main export is sugarcane, so it doesn't matter. She can go on there and say, okay, no one's allowed to eat fish anymore, and it doesn't cause his kingdom to starve or go bankrupt. So really, there's a lot more that's going on here, and I may do a second video just to talk about the narrative changes that were made to The Little Mermaid that also just really add to this as its own film and giving it its own right to exist in the Disney lineup. But those are deep dives for another day, so subscribe to make sure that together we can go beyond storytelling.
I should start by giving you some context.
If one is to understand the great mystery, one must study all its aspects.
I think there's deeper meaning.
The answer to that question that you've been asking yourself.
I want to be real for you.
I simply wanted to tell my stories.
We should own the stars.
We're all just looking out for something real.
Shouldn't I get back to work?